just going to talk about a couple of cases really briefly, hopefully. I don't feel like I've got a lot of talking in me at the moment. But I just want to demonstrate that people that believe in due diligence and innocent until proven guilty aren't ostriches with their heads in the sand. We are aware of, how things are in the real world. We know that cases can take time and that it might be a year or two before someone in particular is arrested. And we also are aware that police make grave mistakes. They miss things or don't do things that they should do, okay? So a couple of cases spring to mind that I can just talk very briefly on, but there might be some similarities that you can see between these and the case of missing woman Suzanne Morphew. So both of the cases I'll talk about actually have a Josh as the husband. So the first case is Susan Powell, who went missing, didn't turn up for work, and the night before Josh had taken their children, Charlie and Braden, on this very strange camping trip in the middle of the night in freezing cold conditions, somewhere out into the desert. And Susan had been treated quite poorly by Josh. This was actually knowledge around. Josh's father, Steve, had a crush on her, wrote songs about her. Josh was a very strange person, very controlling, very bizarre person. And the police searched Josh's home twice. There was things when you read about it that they should have taken from the search, and they didn't take at the search. They took some things and left others. They also had warrants for tracking his vehicle, and they kept renewing these warrants to track the vehicle. But when Josh was making all these rather weird moves, did they follow him around, go to these spots that he would stop at for a few minutes in all these odd places? No, they did not. What was Josh doing? Was he getting rid of evidence? Who knows? The situation with Josh, his situation was such that it was recognised that the children needed supervised visits with Josh. The older of the young boys, Charlie, would say weird things like, "Mummy's dead." He would tell people that Mummy was out in the desert where the rocks are, where the flowers are, that Mummy was in a pit with things over her, things like this. But, the cops would go on all these wild goose chases, searching here and there and following all sorts of leads. When they did finally follow up something based on GPS, they went to a refuge tip. They took a cadaver dog. The cadaver dog gave a hit, and it was on this biomass, this sludge. It turned out to be dead animal and dead animal's feces. Not human cadaver, even though a human cadaver dog hit. And so, 2 years after Suzanne's gone missing and quite a lot's happened, and Josh is doing a lot of things, and selling the house and this, that, the other. He's under a lot of financial pressure. On a visitation, so government worker brings the children around to the home for Josh's supervised visit. So this means that the person must be with these children and Josh at all times. Well, she lets the children go up in front of her into the home, and Josh slams the door in her face. She calls 911. they're very slow on the uptake, and Josh sets him and the young boys on fire, and they all die. So, a narcissist, suicide, filicide, narcissistic actions. Now, the other case I was going to bring up, Josh Burgess, married to Shannon Burgess. They got married quite young, and Shannon was 25 when she went missing. They didn't have any children. They had an open marriage, and Shannon went missing one night when she was supposed to meet one of her brothers for dinner. And even though sometimes she was a very independent person, but she was reliable in this way. So, there's press conferences. Josh, the husband, is there with the family with his hand in his pocket and, supporting them and looking like he's grieving alongside with them and looking like he's cooperating with the police. The police search his home twice. They did not check the storage container on his porch. Did not check it. It was there for months. He put bags of just plastic bags around it, and that's where it stayed. Now, eventually, the cops got a warrant for his phone. And the reason was that they'd noticed Shannon's phone moving around outside of the apartment after she had been reported missing. So this is a few months after, 7-8 months after Shannon's gone missing. So a female officer is talking to him on the phone, trying to talk him out of the home. So she's at the door trying to get him to come out and just talk to her. He's refusing, and he tells her that he murdered Shannon. And an hour and a half later, he finally comes out of the house. He's bleeding because he's been hacking at his neck with a blade, and he gets psychiatrically assessed and then interrogated, and the story comes out, and they'd been having issues in their marriage after a while because Shannon and he had decided they were going to just focus on their own marriage for a while without the external affairs. But Shannon had found out he was still seeing a girlfriend and had told the girlfriend that he was going to leave Shannon and that she would be his main relationship. And they had a fight, and he put his hands around her throat, strangled her. She didn't die. He kept going, got a belt, and strangled her with that. And during this fight, Shannon's bit his hand. And he's explained during the interrogation that, he'd wanted to have make-up sex. She'd agreed, but then they'd fought. She thought it was break-up sex. And it is true that he was seen around his neighbourhood with a woman that, for all intents and purposes, they were acting together like people that were seeing each other romantically. But, they were having this fight. He just wanted Shannon to stop yelling, to stop the screaming, and, he just wanted it to stop. This is what he says. And he throttled her. And then he could have stopped then, and he didn't. He got about and finished it, and he put her in the storage unit that sits on his porch. And that's where she was when the cops were exercising their searches. When the ground thawed after winter, he moved her and he dug a hole in the garden next to the flat, just on this bit of grass, and put her body there. And he didn't want to take her away any further because he wanted to be near her. He couldn't bear her to be far because he loved her, and he regretted what he did. You know, so we've got police that miss things in searches. We've got husbands that did do it. Family members that aren't looking at him suspiciously. Josh, for example, not Powell, but Burgess. Shannon's family were saying no, that they never thought it was him. I mean, they didn't ask cops to look at him at all. They never suspected him at all. Josh Powell, on the other hand, plenty of people thought he did it, including his own sister. Okay. Including his own sister. She, in fact, wore a wire at one point to try and get him to admit it. He acted so strangely. So, you know, okay, you've got lots and lots of parallels and things here. You've got, with Shannon, you've got her husband Josh with a bite on his hand. Now, did Barry Morphew have these marks on his hands in his first interviews with the cops? I think they probably came later, but they would have been there maybe in subsequent interviews, but easily explained with his landscaping role. Maybe he's been punching a few walls in frustration and fear and you know, sadness and grief. Who knows? But, you know, in his industry, probably always have rough hands. But, you know, Josh had the bite on his hand. Did he, you know, he had his hand in his pocket in his, and the press release. Did he just have that hand in his pocket every time he was talking to police? Did they just not notice? Is it because his family, her family was so supportive that they didn't look at him? Did they just miss it? I mean, they missed her body on the porch. You've got this huge search going on at Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew's house at Puma Park. And, you know, so they were there for days and days, and not just CBI, the FBI. And nothing's happened, but, you know, sometimes it does take months. You know, would Barry Morphew want Suzanne nearby? I mean, possibly. Did the FBI miss something at the house huge like that? Possibly. You know, innocent until proven guilty people are not unaware of how cases go and what happens, and how, you know, it is not that at all. With you know, the children, for example, I mean, Charlie was a young boy, but he was speaking up. Here we've got teenage girls not saying a word. With relation, you know, so anything can still happen. I mean, the thing with Joshua is he was a very strange person. People knew that Susan was being controlled. Susan, and the marriage itself was known to be under a lot of pressure. And yet 2 years go by, and then Josh Powell murders Charlie and Braden and takes himself out as well, in a very disgusting act. So that sort of tragedy happens when these arrests don't happen. You know, and then with Shannon and Josh, you know, and that was where, and you know, with Josh Powell, you've got people saying this guy is he's queer. There's something really off about him. And then with Shannon, you've got the family that's supportive. Her family were supportive, you know. So you wonder what. It doesn't seem to matter which way things are going. Doesn't seem to help things get wrapped up any quicker sometimes, you know, depending on what's happened, how the murder's been done. You know, Susan Powell's never been found. she was a long way away. This is by a guy that abused her for years. Josh, in a moment of anger, because Shannon had said, "I'm sorry I ever married you," and enraged him in that moment. And she's in the garden, on the porch, and then in the garden. So which is it with, if Barry Morphew's done something to Suzanne, is she 100 miles away? Is she on his property? And does it point to long-term abuse or a rage moment just out of the blue where she is? Does that make a difference? Even where I live, my internet connection is really unreliable, and that's the network and the Wi-Fi. It's really unreliable, and I live near the city, and sometimes I'd need to leave my house to use the internet, or upload anything. So Suzanne living in a little hamlet, Maysville's a hamlet. You've got, the ski slopes, all the fun bunnies up here, people living large and loose probably whilst they work, holiday jobs and things, and that kind of lifestyle, and people out there having fun. On one part of Kaufman Ridge to the west, up past Monarch Pass, and, to the other you've got, the RV park, but then you've got the little area of Poncha Springs before you actually get into the town of Salida. But I can see they're nestled in a gulch there. There would be very poor service. I wouldn't be surprised if, do we know what time this wedding was supposed to be, and who's found this online? When you stream things live, it also is probably online somewhere to watch. What time was it? I can see Suzanne wanting to leave her home to go somewhere for reliable internet so she can stream the wedding without it dropping out, without not being able to watch. Maybe she wanted to go down to Poncha Springs Cafe, where she's a local, where she's known, where the manager would know what her face looks like, so that she can have uninterrupted Wi-Fi service and watch and have some brunch, while she waits for her gals to come back, because they were going to go out together, all the women, the mother-in-law and the girls, for Mother's Day. Come on, Suzanne is not Barry's mother. You'll make such a big deal about that, but she is not his mother. Yes, I know it's special, them having children and some circumstances, but really, it was the girls that were looking forward to having dinner with Suzanne, and Suzanne had the day free. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they have really sketchy internet service there that is not reliable. They are nestled right on a national forest, in a sort of gully, and I can see if the wedding was during the daytime, she could go out on her bike that morning and go and watch the wedding. So, it's funny because, Barry loses a car and Jeff loses a car, but that looks guilty when Barry does it. He sold a car in Indiana, sold a truck. Jeff Puckett had a car stolen. Okay, so I think it turned up, at some junkyard or something. But, he could have, was it burned out? I don't know. Was it? Yes, and, I know there's the case of the missing gun. There is a missing gun. But again, could be circumstantial, could be set up by Barry, or it could have been used by someone. Who knows? Aren't guns supposed to be kept locked away? I don't know. I guess I reckon they've probably got lots of guns there. They just would. It'd just be part of that household. The fact that Susan was alone, that would have been known. Morgan would have known that the girls were away even. I mean, her and Barry would have been talking quite regularly, I think. You know, things didn't fall apart until after the Broomfield job. Which, by the way, no, Barry is not down there on a Sunday with a bobcat digging up the deep foundation stones and putting Suzanne in them. No, she's not there, okay? He couldn't use that machinery on site on the weekend. I mean, he's not supposed to be there at all. He's hardly going to use his bobcat there on site on a Sunday. He could go and inspect the site. That's not doing work, to go and inspect a site. You would expect him to have done nothing. He's just there to view. Who knows? I know it's all bonkers, but no, he's not digging up that Broomfield wall. And the workers who actually worked there 2 or 3 days weren't using a bobcat either. Okay. But guess who had access to the bobcat? Barry's workers. So the bobcat is not down in Denver when Barry is. People know that Suzanne is alone. They know Barry's not there. They know the girls are away probably. Yep, they know she's alone. And they've got hours before they are cruising down the road together, taking photos where it's Jeff Puckett that looks, doesn't he look puckered out? He's asleep in the back with some, you know, he's out to it. He looks a bit tired if you ask me. You know, this guy that's got a record for sexual assault that is coming up on charges for the assault of a woman married to a boss of his who has already been in the clink for years, who does have drug problems, who has had a stolen car, who knows where Barry lives, who would have known possibly from Barry directly, but possibly from Morgan Gentile, that Suzanne Morphew is alone in the house. Now, Suzanne's friendly, probably friendly to someone like Jeffrey Puckett. Yeah, and people like Jeffrey Puckett, you got to be careful when you're friendly to the Jeffrey Pucketts of the world, because they take it a little bit too seriously. Maybe it got his motor running. The kindness, the smiles, the friendliness. Suzanne is a really girlish, attractive, light woman. You can sense it, can't you? Just that she's just got such a grace about her, and for her to shine her light maybe on a Jeffrey Puckett, allegedly, you know, maybe he just couldn't help himself. Yeah. Now Kaufman Ridge, that runs west to east, all the way along, you know, up beyond Monarch Pass. Now Kaufman is rugged. It is bare. It is bluffs. It's barren, and it's wild. To the east, yes, an easy drop on the way to Broomfield from Salida. Lots of crags. It's not such a popular place because it's not so beautiful. It's where it starts getting a bit bare and but there are a lot of ravines. And then out further beyond Monarch Pass, it's wild there, and for some reason Kaufman, but the time factor, a little bit more time needed to get out up there, but locals, people of the area would know that you could crash a plane there, you would never find it. You might never find it. There'd be lots of bodies there, probably lost hikers and things, and so many crevices. It's so dense and wild, and someone could easily be put there. Yeah, and for some reason, I've just got Kaufman. It's just like it's just something my twit mind just won't let go of. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to discuss, just to say, look, innocent till proven guilty doesn't mean, unawareness that, sometimes cases just take time, and it doesn't mean because it's been 7 months 6 months that there is not an arrest imminent. It doesn't mean because the feds have been out to cite that something wasn't missed. It doesn't matter whether families are suspicious of the person or not. Okay, these are things I am fully aware of. Okay, but don't let people get into your mind and take away your humanity and compassion and make you feel like you can just act like a military soldier who just views their neighbour as targets and not as people. It's a tragedy when people do not act when they see things. And an example here is Melanie Boudreau. Sorry, not Melanie. You know why I said Melanie, though. Michelle Boudreau Deegan, because often neighbours don't speak up. Now, see something, say something. Do speak up in the right moments. Doesn't mean persecute something, but do the right thing. And Michelle's neighbours, they probably thought long and hard, but they knew it was serious enough because little girls are involved. They wanted to speak up. They contacted CPS and nothing was done, and those girls are killed. Okay? But it doesn't mean you just persecute anyone and everyone because you're being whipped into a frenzy by people, because you're enjoying the salacious entertainment, because you're watching witches that cry about people that they don't know for views with this fake compassion, or because of the status of the people that you're watching, because of all their experience, the fact that they've been in law enforcement, or that they're movers and shakers, that they're connected, or that they have been on Dr. Phil or on Oprah. Doesn't mean you should be led to act like an automaton soldier. If you're going to invest, that's crowdsourced intelligence. Doesn't mean lynch mob. It doesn't mean lynch mob. And that you look around suspiciously and like you feel like you can rain down holy hell on another human being. That's not your place. See something, say something. Yes, if you have something valuable to contribute, tell law enforcement and keep telling them. And don't assume that they're just going to see it if it's somewhere on the net or if it's on a Facebook thing. Maybe you should just ring them and call them. And if you feel deeply enough about it, if it's something deeply concerning, ring them again, because maybe they've just missed it, okay? Because as we're seeing, no one's perfect. They're not finding bodies on porches when they've got search warrants. They're only looking at phone data 7 months after someone's gone missing. There's so many cases where things are overlooked. They don't walk through a gate. They don't... Yeah, something happens and people die. So, fully aware, but, think about things and think about who you're persecuting and why. Doesn't mean you're not right, but be right for the right reasons. Yeah. Okay, I'm sick of talking. You're probably sick of listening. And, yeah. I know there was heaps of, things I wanted to talk to you about these cases that are sort of, but hopefully I've covered enough that you get the idea that I do understand how things can go. I'm not, an ostrich with my head in the sand. See you later.